Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. Back today to talk about my most anticipated releases for July to September. And I actually have so many that we're just going to have to get straight into them. Coming out on the 4th of July is A Woman of Opinion by Sean Lusk. Historical fiction depicting the life of Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, a pioneering English writer of the 18th century, most well known for championing inoculation in England. This book, as I say, is historical fiction really digging into her travel, her writing, as well as her relationship to her daughter, which may have been strained due to how vocal and opinionated her mother was. Another historical fiction I'm very much looking forward to coming out on the 11th of July is The King's Mother by Annie Garthwaite. What for me is the long-awaited sequel to her first novel, Cecily. I don't know how many books there are going to be in this series, but the series is following Cecily Neville, who was wife to Richard, Duke of York, and through the course of her life ended up being mother to two different English kings, Edward IV and Richard III. This book is picking up in 1461. We're really digging into the Wars of the Roses at this point, and I think a main theme of this book is going to be the four major female players within the Wars of the Roses, all of whom are vying for power, either as wives or mothers to the king. I presume these being Cecily herself, Margaret of Anjou, who was the wife to Henry VI, Margaret Beaufort, who is the mother to Henry Tudor, who we know will go on to be Henry VII, and Elizabeth Woodville, the wife of Edward IV, for whom Cecily Neville was her mother-in-law. But as the tagline says, for there can only be one king and only one king's mother. Staying with the Wars of the Roses, we now have a non-fiction offering that I'm very much looking forward to. Son of Prophecy, The Rise of Henry Tudor by Nathen Amin, coming out on the 15th of July. This is a semi-biography, but also looking at Henry Tudor's relationship to Wales, digging into his Welsh roots and how he would grow to rise towards the English throne after defeating Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth. I probably don't give Henry VII as much love as I should. Considering my love of the Tudors, I don't always tend to dwell upon the early period, but hopefully Nathen Amin is here to help me remedy that. Another historical fiction that is highly anticipated for me coming out on the 18th of July is The Trouble with Mrs Montgomery Hurst by Bookshoe's very own Katie Lumsden. I've spoken about how much I'm looking forward to this one because I love The Secrets of Hartwood Hall, which is very much a send-up to the Brontes and to Gothic literature. This in turn is more of a play on the comedy of manners, being a bit of a send-up to Elizabeth Gaskell and especially Jane Austen. Very much inspired by Emma, we've got this small town of characters who all kind of prod and poke into each other's lives, who are completely rattled by the discovery that Mr Montgomery Hurst, who was seen as a very eligible bachelor, has unexpectedly gotten married and to someone who they all deem unsuitable. So I think this book is really recounting the gossip surrounding this. I don't know if we're looking at lots of different points of view and perspectives, or if we are following one central character. But yes, I think there's going to be a lot of bitching behind people's backs, bit of gossip, bit of scandal. I am definitely here for this. Also coming out on the 18th of June is The Lost Queen by Carol McGrath, which goes to show that Elizabeth Gilbert was right in her book Big Magic, when she said that if you do not write the novel that you've been percolating in your brain, somebody else will come to write it. Because ever since I had learned about Berengaria of Navarre, who was the wife to Richard I, and the fact that she ended up having to travel with his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, through Europe to go and meet him on crusade and marry, I always thought, wouldn't the conversations between those two be a fantastic book? And that is exactly what Carol McGrath is presenting, though I think with a little bit of adventure thrown in. Eleanor of Aquitaine is so well known, but Berengaria of Navarre is, as the title kind of hints, a bit of a lost queen. We don't know very much about her. I don't even think there's a biography on her life because we know so little. And so I'm very much looking forward to her take on her and seeing these two women kind of play off against each other. Final book that I'm very much looking forward to coming out on the 18th of July is If I Loved You Less by Aamna Qureshi. A Jane Austen quote for a title is always going to reel me in, but if you really want to get me, you'll pick my favourite line of Jane Austen. If I Loved You Less, I might be able to talk about it more. So as soon as I saw the title of this book, realised it was a modern day Emma reimagining, I was a goner. I gotta read this. In this, our Emma figure is Humera, who has been very content with matchmaking her aunt and sister, but has now decided that she wants a turn at love. She highlights on her perfect guy, but while she's making her attempts to set herself up, it seems like her long-term rival and family friend Fawad is kind of sabotaging her, is very disapproving of this man for some reason. They have long since had a bit of a bickering relationship, but maybe that's starting to grow into something more. I'm an absolute sucker for an Emma Mr. Knightley dynamic, so I absolutely have to read this one. Coming out on the 25th of July, we have the Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love by India Holton. You may know that recently I completely blitzed through the Dangerous Damsel series by India Holton, and now she has a new series called Love's Academic, which I believe is still historical fiction with a bit of magic sprinkled in there. This book is a bit of rivals to lovers to ornithologists who are travelling across Europe trying to find a rare magical bird and keep on sabotaging each other's efforts. But of course, on the hunt for this bird, are they going to discover something more that is bubbling between the two of them? I've so far found India Holton to be like a bit of a popcorn romance writer. I find it very Moorish. I will just eat up anything that she gives me, so I will definitely be picking this one up. Another Jane Austen retelling, this time coming out on the 6th of August, is Elizabeth of East Hampton, which is the second book in Audrey Bellezza's For the Love of Austen series. Her first book, which was a retelling of Emma, which I have not yet read. I know so many people really enjoyed it. And this time, you might be able to imagine, is a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but with Elizabeth Bennet transported to the Hamptons. Elizabeth is living on Long Island trying to save her family's bakery when she comes up against Will Darcy. I feel like this is going to follow the plot of Pride and Prejudice pretty faithfully, aside from obviously the modern setting, but once I've read Emma of 83rd Street, I will eventually find my way to this one. Coming out on the 8th of August, we have another romance book, but one that I think is going to be quite highly anticipated because this is a darling author of BookTube. We have The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. You will know that my favourite romance book, at least so far that I have read, is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, and so I was delighted to hear that they had a new book coming out. This time focusing on ex-lovers Theo and Kit, who had a rather painful breakup when they were on a flight around Europe. However, 4 years later, they discover that they've still got a non-refundable voucher and decide that they do have to use it, and so are going to be spending 3 weeks going across many romantic European cities together. Will they be able to rekindle their spark? It's a pretty simple premise for a book, and I think what's going to make this really special is Casey McQuiston's writing. Their character work, their snark is always fantastic, and that will make this not just another second chance romance, but something really, really cute and special. I always joke that you can never get through one of these anticipated releases without a Greek myth retelling, and of course I've got a couple of those. Or in this case, I should say Roman myth retelling. First off being The Heir of Venus by Laura Shepperson, coming out on the 15th of August. A retelling of the Aeneid, but from the perspective of the women around Aeneas, looking at Creosa, Dido and Lavinia. I don't know very many details aside from that, but these female-focused myth retellings are very popular. A non-fiction history I'm very much looking forward to is 18, A History of Britain in 18 Young Lives by Alice Loxton, coming out on the 22nd of August. I really, really enjoyed Uproar by this author, and now she's presenting a very different kind of history, looking at 18 different historic lives who did great things before the age of 18. From the future Elizabeth I to Richard Burton, really getting an insight into the young lives of remarkable people. I just think it's a fantastic concept for a book, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Back to myth retelling, we have A Voyage Home by Pat Barker, coming out on the 22nd of August. I've been kind of hit or miss with Pat Barker's retellings of the Trojan War, but I know that so many people will be very much looking forward to this. The Trojan War has ended, the Greeks are on their way home. This book, I believe, is particularly looking at Clytemnestra, Agamemnon and Cassandra, and that might be enough to get me to pick this up. I have been reading a lot of Clytemnestra retellings recently that I do wonder what it is that Pat Barker's going to be able to do with this that makes it different. A lot of people don't really like her retellings because of the fact that she uses a lot of modern slang, which doesn't bother me quite so much. But yeah, I am keen to see what is different and unique about this particular retelling. Something a bit different for me, coming out on the 29th of August, we have I Love Romcoms and I Am a Feminist, a manifesto in 100 romcoms by Karina Antrobus. This basically goes through 100 different romcoms and the feminist messages that we can take from them, from Barbie to 13 Going on 30, to It Happened One Night, to one of my personal favourites, 10 Things I Hate About You. I love a romcom, I consider myself a feminist. This is a perfect mashup for me, and I think will just be very good fun. Then finally getting into some of these September books, I know many British women of a certain age will have been delighted to find out that Jacqueline Wilson was providing a sequel to her Girls series, which followed teenagers Ellie, Magda and Nadine through the trials and tribulations of being 13 and 14 years old. But in Think Again, which is coming out on the 12th of September, we're looking at Ellie, Magda and Nadine as adults, and I am so excited about this. Getting to see Ellie in her 30s and 40s, because I believe that she does have a daughter now, trying to pick up the pieces of her life because her life is just not as she planned it. Very relatable content. I am very much looking forward to this. A very different thing coming out on the 12th of September is Henry V, The Astonishing Rise of England's Greatest Warrior King by Dan Jones. I'm a big fan of Dan Jones. I love both his non-fiction and his fiction writing, and so I feel like of course he would write a biography of Henry V. Yeah, don't have too much to say about this. Dan Jones, Henry V, seems like a perfect pairing. I think Shannon from 155 Books would absolutely kill me if I did not mention the new book coming out by ML Rio, author of If We Were Villains, which is coming out on the 24th of September, called Graveyard Shift, in which we have 5 different people. Every time that they walk home, they come across each other in a graveyard, and then one day in October, they find a hole that hadn't been there before, and in a place that a grave should not be. And so the question is, who dug it and why? And as more holes keep on popping up, the mystery is just even more enticing for them. Seems quite different to If We Were Villains, and I'd be very very keen to see what BookTube has to say about this one. And then finally, I could not let this video go by without giving a nod to a book that has been long awaited for me, coming out on the 26th of September, which is The Odyssey by Stephen Fry. I am such a massive fan of Stephen Fry's Greek myth retellings, which started with Mythos, then Heroes, and then Troy, and now finally we are getting his retelling of the Odyssey, Odysseus and his 10-year trek to get back home to Ithaca, which will be told with Stephen Fry's trademark wit and sense of humour. I've been waiting such a long time. But yes, this is definitely fighting for the top spot for most anticipated book for me. So there we go, those are all of my most anticipated releases for July to September. Please let me know if any books that you know are coming out and I've missed, anything you think I would be really interested in. I would love to hear from you, and let me know which of these titles you are most looking forward to. I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.